Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. The Labor, Industry, and Veterans and Military Affairs Finance and Policy Committee will come to order. I would like to announce that this meeting will take place in accordance with House Rule 10.01. This meeting may be viewed on House Public Information TV, which is available on the House website. As is the custom with this committee, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Doyle, will you please take the roll?
Chair Eklund.
Present.
Vice Chair Zhang.
Present.
Representative Detmer.
Present.
Representative McDonald.
Present.
Representative Berg.
Present.
Representative Bliss.
Present.
Representative Edelson.
Present.
Representative Frederick.
Present.
Representative Greenman.
Present.
Representative Nelson.
Present.
Representative Poston.
Present.
Representative Raleigh.
Raleigh present.
Representative Sundin.
Sunbeam is present.
And we do have quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from January 19th, 2021. Every member should have received a copy of today's minutes in their inbox. There is one small typo that can be corrected by the Committee Legislative Assistants. Representative Berg, can you move the minutes with that typo correction?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Berg. Any comments or corrections that other members can see? Seeing none, we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor of the adoption of the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Minutes are adopted. Members, there's copies. Travis Reese, our committee administrator, sent you copies of the committee rules earlier today and can be found on the committee website. If there's any questions right now, we can take them. Otherwise, I ask you to take a look at the committee rules and we can discuss questions next week at our first committee meeting. Does anybody have any questions at this time on the committee rules?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Representative Detmer.
Guys, I would suggest that, having the words "and email to committee members and staff" at the end of the bullet point. I'll repeat that. I would suggest that the words "and email to the committee members and staff" be added, at the end of the bullet point.
Mr. Reese, do you see where Representative Detmer is talking about there?
That's after bullet point under 6 regarding written testimony being submitted up to 24 hours.
Okay, thank you, Representative Detmer.
Yeah.
I think we can add that. That doesn't seem like it would make much change. Might clear things up. Thank you, Representative Detmer.
You bet. You bet.
I don't see any hands raised, so if the committee members would each take a look at the committee rules, I think they're pretty basic to all the committees. I'm sure you've seen pretty much the same thing for all the committees you sit on, but if you have any other questions or concerns, please submit them to myself and Committee Administrator Reese and CLA Ms. Doyle. Members, next on the agenda, we'll hear from several of our veterans organizations here in the state in Minnesota. We can take questions after each presenter. Or the presenters, I will call on you, and then please start by identifying yourself for the record and then proceed. First up today will be Tim Engstrom, Director of Communications, American Legion Department of Minnesota. Mr. Engstrom, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tim Engstrom. Members of the committee, it's good to be here. The American Legion I've sent some materials to you. The American Legion is structured around its 4 pillars. You probably have heard of the 4 pillars of the American Legion. They are Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation, National Security, Americanism, and Children and Youth. And they represent how the American Legion takes care of the whole veteran. So that includes everything from veterans rehabilitation to the community that the veteran lives in. You probably have seen many community projects done by many veteran American Legion posts on the local level. But it also involves our involvement with national security, pushing for legislation such as the GI Bill and Americanism, which includes everything from baseball to the flag code, which originated from the American Legion. Some of the greatest feats of the American Legion over the years since its founding in 1918, have been the drafting of the original legislation that became the GI Bill during World War II, lobbying for its approval, and over the years, pushing for its expansion and extension in time. Now there's the forever GI Bill. When I was in, the GI Bill sunset after 10 years. If you didn't take advantage of it, you lose it. Now it's forever, and this is stuff that the American Legion does. We created what became the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs today. In the early years after World War I, the Legion cared for disabled veterans that were all over the place after the war. And in addition to helping them with life problems and things, and the federal government came when it created the Veterans Bureau in 1921 and said, what are you guys doing? We want to replicate that. And we had been pushing the federal government to take care of its war wounded in the first place. And so that started the Veterans Bureau. And in 1930, it became the Veterans Administration. And today we know it as the VA. It's so commonplace in our American language. But all of that happened because of the American Legion. We created the standards for the flag code on June 14th, 1923. And June 14th now, you know, is Flag Day. And that legislation, that set of code was passed as legislation by Congress in 1942. And of course, it's been modified since then. A good recent example of a modification came in 2005 with the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act, which prohibited property management from restricting homeowners from displaying the US flag on their own property. You know how sometimes you run into these neighborhoods with covenants and rules? Well, they can't tell people to not fly the Old Glory. So things like that, the American Legion has had a hand in. We fight for veterans in Washington and at state capitals across the nation, such as our own. Many laws, from getting the VA to acknowledge Agent Orange to making the feds investigate Persian Gulf War syndrome, the Legion has been there. In fact, the American Legion even funds a research into brain science at the University of Minnesota right here. We do a lot of things that we really don't toot our own horns about. And for example, we even paid the Coast Guard when the federal government shut down. They were able to feed their families and keep their homes thanks to the American Legion. And we continue to push the federal government to include paying the Coast Guard when the government does shut down. We do things like mentor youth through Legion Baseball, oratorical contests, Boys State, and through the Auxiliary Girls State, scholarships, holiday events. Even when I lived in Albert Lee, the Legion would host a Halloween costume contest for kids. So, you know, local and national. We perform millions of acts of kindness and charities at posts all across the state, as you know. We do countless assisting veterans with their VA benefits with our service officers. We do more power of attorneys for veterans than anyone. Many times when the federal government won't help the veteran, we will pay the bills anyway, depending on the post. Some posts are different than others. All the posts operate independently. That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is some of the organizations are very top down. The American Legion is very grassroots in that you may go to one post and all they do is baseball and they don't do anything else. And you may go to another post and they have the whole array of the 4 pillars. So it's grassroots organization, and I think that's been a key into why it was so popular and why it's so large, because it has a wide variety of programs from which to choose. You know, sometimes people say, well, how does baseball help a veteran? I think sometimes the veterans get a lot after they've been in the service by continuing to serve their communities in different ways. Some of them want to do things like mentor youth through baseball, and some of them want to do things like help volunteer at the Veterans Administration. So it varies. Of course, as you know, the American Legion also does a lot to with the construction of veterans memorials across the country, including many of them at the National Mall in DC. The American Legion was chartered by Congress in 1919 as a patriotic veterans organization. So excuse me for shifting back to 1918, but it was 1919, and the first convention took place right here in Minneapolis. In fact, Minnesota was very interesting because after World War I, a group of veterans started forming a veterans organization called the Loyal Legion. And then when they got word that the American Legion was forming, they just became part of the American Legion. And so a lot of those, Minnesota started off with kind of a head start when it comes to members, and that's how they were able to convince the National American Legion to have the first convention right here in Minneapolis. And in 2018, the 100th convention took place here in Minneapolis. So that was a pretty pretty large event. I guess that's most of my presentation. I should say that we are a nonpartisan organization. We're a nonprofit organization. And many people know me because I'm the editor of the Minnesota Legionnaire more than in my communications director role. But this is the Minnesota Legionnaire's most recent issue. You might even find yourself in it sometimes because we are dedicated to making sure that the constituents of the Veterans Affairs committees are informed about what's going on in St. Paul. And I think that's good. I think government operates best with sunshine, and most people do too. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Engstrom. I don't see any hands up yet, but there will be some. But I particularly liked your comment about what can the veteran, what can the American Legion and baseball have to do with each other? Well, I think all you need to do is take a look at Ely, Minnesota, in my district, when they have the big American Legion baseball tournament every year. The whole community turns out. Tom Coombe is the editor of the local paper, and if anybody that knows Tom, he's probably one of the biggest baseball nuts in the state of Minnesota. And it's just fun to see the excitement in that goes on with an event like that. So that's what to me, that's one of your comments just stood out, is that's what the American Legion has to do with baseball, or what can the veterans have to do with baseball, is just watch an event that goes on in a place like Ely, Minnesota. So thank you, Mr. Engstrom. And I see we have some hands now. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the presenter. My father was very active in the American Legion, Eugene early, post 121 of Watertown, and then held several ranks throughout the state of Minnesota as an American Legionnaire. I'm currently a Sons of the American Legion here in Delano, the Delano Legion, and a proud member of the Sons of the American Legion. Although sometimes I feel that I'm not worthy to have that membership, but nevertheless, we need to carry on the traditions to the next generation. But I'm just curious how our American Legions are doing today. I know many of them have, of course, have struggled like many businesses and nonprofits during the shutdown, and with charitable gambling, which is a big part of usually the legions. So how are they doing in this state of affairs, and what can we do in the legislature, tax-wise or other, to continue to promote and help our American Legions?
That's a very good question. Some posts have had gone into the pandemic in a better financial situation than others. My post 550 had done pretty good on gambling revenue there in Bloomington going into the shutdown. So losing the gambling revenue temporarily didn't hurt them as much because they had built up a good amount at that point. But a lot of posts have been struggling with that, and they still have to deal with a number of the size of their buildings. If they have a building, my post doesn't have a building. That's another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the American Legion isn't the building, it is the group of people working together. But a lot of the American Legions do have a restaurant, and if you eat at that restaurant, the proceeds go toward charity. Or if you go to bingo at that restaurant or at that post, or if you do the charitable gambling. But a lot of them have struggled, and we have really worked hard to avoid having a landscape of Minnesota with a bunch of posts shut down, VFW and American Legion. And one thing that we have asked, and the CTF asks as well, is if we could reduce the tax burden to the property tax burden to our posts to zero. Because these buildings often act as the community gathering place for everyone. When I lived in Albert Lea, the Rotary met there, the Kiwanis met there. People from out of town, like the Blue Zones, want to talk to Albert Lea, they go to the Legion. Everything happens at the Legion's banquet halls, and the bar is often just a little corner of the building, and it's usually not the majority of the place. And so I think the public good that it does and the charitable good that it does in the community justifies the economic benefit of having zero property taxes for your American Legion and VFW posts.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yes, as a wedding photographer for the last 33 years, I've been to many, many American Legion buildings for receptions and gatherings, and they are very important to the communities. Our American Legion here in Delano is just 2 blocks away from my studio, so I drive by it every night. Occasionally I'll stop in when I have permission from my wife, join my friends there and fellow Legionnaires. But can you just briefly, and then I'll be done, Mr. Chairman, talk about the state and the momentum of the Sons of the American Legion, and if there's anything that we can do to help promote that.
Mr. Engstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, the Sons of the American Legion is, and I'll explain for everybody else that it is a program of the American Legion. And it is doing well this year in terms of membership, but it has struggled in other years. I think a lot of the veterans population across the country, as you know, is in decline. I think Congress has fewer veterans now than it has had since the 19th century at some point. There's always a general trend going on. But our numbers in the Legion have been coming around pretty well. You notice, I think a lot of the Vietnam veterans didn't join until they were in their 40s or 50s. And I think with this latest wave of young veterans, when, you know, a lot of them are in their 30s right now, maybe early 40s, and things I think will pick up as they get older, just like the, you know, a lot of times I put into the Legionnaire, the taps, and I see, you know, a 94-year-old or so dies, and they'll have how long they were a Legion member, and it'll be 40 or 50 years. But that goes back to when they were in their 40s or 50s. So I think as we go, we're going to continue to balance out some of the losses, maybe not to be where we once were, but not, you know, not ever going away. And I think the Sons of the American Legion is going to trend in the same direction. I hope that answers your question, but that's the best answer I can give.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Engstrom. I appreciate that. It does, and we'll work on that property tax. I think that we're probably all very much in favor of that. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Representative Detmer. Representative Detmer, you need to unmute.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Engstrom. I have a few bills that the veterans world should be looking at and maybe following as they go through the legislature. And if you go to my website, the legislative website, but I can give you the the bills right now that Representative McDonald talked about, the taxes and so forth, that the issues with our legions and VFWs. I belong to Legion 225 here in Forest Lake, and also the VFW Post 4210. But House File 184 deals with lawful gambling, equipment purchase exemption provided if you purchase equipment. And I carried some of these bills before. House File 143, lawful gambling organization annual audit and report requirements modified, because those audits do cost the local post. And House File 142, gambling net receipt rate readjusted. That's the big one that most of your VFW American Legions would like to see done. And then House File 140, lawful gambling combined net receipts tax calculated modified. That's another bill that's we're trying to go forward. So hopefully we get some of these forward and get signed into law, so that helps our organizations out. But I'm not sure, is somebody that's going to be testifying today is going to talk about what is the Commander's task force? Is there somebody going to speak to that? Because many members of our committee might not know what the Commander's task force is all about.
Representative Detmer, we have Mr. Kemery will be up next to talk. He's the chair of the Commander's Task Force.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's good. But those are my issues, and we'll be working hard, as we always do, with the chair here to get some of these good veterans issues taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Representative
Representative Detmer. Representative Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tim, I just wanted to share a personal story about the impact that the American Legion has had through the youth activities. The American Legion Auxiliary sponsors something called the American Legion Girls State and Girls Nation. My daughter was selected to go to Girls State, where she was selected as the senior senator from Minnesota. Went to Washington, D.C., learned all about our government through the civics program, was elected by her peers as the Secretary of Defense, and was able to learn how our government operates. And I just want to commend you and the American Legion on the activities that the Legion is doing, not only for our veterans, but for the veterans' families. And I look forward to working with you long into the future and making sure that we've got these types of programs for our youth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Raleigh. Not seeing any other hands. Mr. Engstrom, thank you. We'll be in contact as always. I appreciate your time in front of the committee.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time.
Next on the agenda is Todd Kemery. Mr. Kemery is the chair of the Commander's Task Force. Mr. Kemery, please welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely. My name is Todd Kemery. I'm the current chair of the Commander's Task Force. I'm also the current president for the Paralyzed Veterans of America. And I'd like to thank the committee and also Chair Eklund for providing this opportunity to be able to come before you and explain a little bit about who the Commander's Task Force is and a little bit of what we do. So
please proceed.
Thank you, sir. So pushing on, I had two handouts that hopefully made it to your folders, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on that, and I'll let you continue to read that at your leisure. But the Commander's Task Force is comprised of 9 congressionally chartered veteran service organizations here in Minnesota. And we meet regularly on a monthly basis. Sometimes we have special meetings to discuss and advocate for veterans' legislative needs. And in addition, the Commander's Task Force addresses many other concerns affecting veterans and their families. This is the 3rd year we have focused on a more unified approach among the veteran service organizations and an emphasis on using our membership to help get our message out. as an example of what that unity means is Jerry Kaiser and the UVLC, Greg Peterson and the Minnesota CVSO, and the Military Action Group that is chaired, co-chaired and chaired by Representative Bob Detmer and Senator Bruce Anderson. We work together with our goals and initiatives to get a sort of a togetherness on what each group is doing and be able to help out with each of their initiatives amongst ourselves. Within the CTF, there is now a core group of legislative leaders that return to the task force multiple times year after year, resulting in less of a learning curve moving forward with our legislative goals. This year, we have had extended an invitation to our auxiliaries and associate members to sit in our monthly meetings. We are finding there are two main outcomes of including more participating and observing within our meetings. One, the CTF goals and initiatives reaching more membership faster, and two, resulting in more members reaching out to their legislators and requesting their support. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. I will entertain any sort of questions or be able to answer anything that would help pertain to what we, the Commander's Task Force, does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemery. I don't see any hands raised yet, but I'm sure there will be. But I appreciate the work that the Commander's Task Force does. It's been a tremendous learning experience with me to get to know you folks and the good work you do for the veterans in the state of Minnesota. Do any of the committee members have any questions for Mr. Kemery as far as what Commander's Task Force does, or do a deeper dive? I'll go with committee members first before we take questions from the public.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Representative Detmer.
And again, the Commander's Task Force does a great job in educating those that are serving in the legislature, because I know every year they have their training session up at Ripley. We didn't get to have it this year, but I think it was remotely done. And it's a good time to get to know all the new leaders in the Commander's Task Force, because they change every year. And so that's why it's important to get the legislators together and meet up at Ripley to talk about the different issues that will be coming across the legislature. So hats off to the Commander's Task Force.
Thank you, sir. I might add also that
Mr. Kemery.
I'm sorry, Chair, I jumped in there. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to expand a little bit about that. So within your folder, the handouts, we have 7 initiatives this year that we're going to be working on. And that's a little bit of an explanation of each one of them on that handout. So as Representative Detmer had mentioned, each year we get together and we come up with a priority list of initiatives, and we carry that forth, and that's what's sitting in front of you, hopefully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kemery. Representative Detmer, any follow-up?
I'm good to go.
Thank you, Representative Detmer. Representative Edelson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Apologize. I was reading all of the handout that you sent. Mr. Kemery is really fantastic. I love all the projects you're working on. I was just curious a little bit more about the history of the Commander's Task Force. And to Representative Detmer's point, I would love to learn more. But when did the Commander's Task Force come to be again? You might have said, and I just might have missed it.
I didn't say Representative Edelson, so I am a little embarrassed to say that I'm not too familiar with the history. Maybe one of the other gentlemen that I rely upon when I'm not so articulate, either Tim Engstrom, but certainly if we can't get that answered within the next couple of seconds, I can follow up with a more comprehensive narrative on when and some of the history.
Representative Edelson.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Chair, I lost you. It's Zoom. You have to like figure out where people are. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kemery. I think having just some history, I'm sure that the task force probably came to be for a really good reason, especially all the great work you're doing. So I just am history buff, just kind of curious about that. So thank you so much. If you could follow up.
Thank you, Representative Edelson. I see Representative, I almost promoted you here, Mr. Engstrom, whether you want it or not. You have the history on when the Commander's Task Force was formed?
It was formed in 1988 as a by the different commanders. It's unique to Minnesota, and it's oftentimes been shown to other states, and other states will say, "Well, we ought to do something like that."
Thank you, Mr. Engstrom.
And Mr. Chair,
Representative Detmer.
if I might, I add also the Commander's Task Force. The members are, if I recall, the governor has a lot to do with some type of oversight too, in terms of membership. I know talking to Ben Johnson, the legislative liaison, he's really involved with the Commander's Task Force too. So there's good communications with the Commander's Task Force and the governor's office too. So I think that's important.
Thank you, Representative Detmer. And one thing that I think that a lot of members that haven't been involved with veterans issues is we have a terrific network throughout the state that works well together to take care of a multitude of veterans issues. So I'd like to commend all of them. A lot of these folks are presenting today. So if there's any other questions for Mr. Kemery. Ms. Kemery, thank you for coming to the committee. We appreciate it, and we will be in touch, obviously, as we move forward for what the Commander's Task Force legislative agenda is. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Eklund, and also thank you to the committee.
Next on the agenda is Lou Michaels, Commander, Jewish War Veterans of America. Mr. Michaels, welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Well, thank you, Chair. My name is Lou Michaels. I'm the Department Commander for the Jewish War Veterans of Minnesota, posts 162, 331, and 354. Also, the National Historian for the Jewish War Veterans of the USA. I thank you for allowing me to come out for a few minutes and talk a little bit about us. We are the oldest of the VSO service organizations, and we were founded by Civil War members in 1896. This year is our 125th anniversary. I'm very proud to be a part of the Commander's Task Force. As they say, we're all together, and we certainly are. We work very hard as a group. I love my comrades. It's great to be a veteran, and it's great to be an American. And we're there to help. I bring greetings from our national commander, Jeff Sachs, also our very first national vice president, Alan Paley. And we're here to help. Our veterans are necessary. We appreciate the House and the Senate for doing what they're doing, but we're there as a body. It doesn't, as they say, if you break one chain, you break it all. And I don't look at it that way, because they're all my comrades. And I don't care if you're a paralyzed veteran, an American Legion, a VFW. We all stand for the same thing: helping our comrades, helping our women, helping our men, helping whatever we have to do. It's very important. And again, I thank all of you. I thank you, Chair Eklund, and the rest of the ladies and gentlemen that make our state of Minnesota House and Senate one of the best in America. Please keep us together, help us. Again, thank you, Chair Eklund, thank you, Bob Detmer, thank you all. for allowing me to come on. God bless all of you. And as I say, be safe, stay safe, wear the mask, everybody. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Any questions for Mr. Michaels from the committee members? Mr. Michaels, I appreciate your time coming in front of the committee, and if anybody comes up with anything, we'll make sure we get our questions to you. I see we have your legislative director up next, so without any further ado, Tommy Johnson, legislative director for the Jewish War Veterans of America. Mr. Johnson, welcome to the committee. Welcome back to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tommy Johnson. I'm the legislative director for the Jewish War Veterans of America, Department of Minnesota. I did not have testimony prepared. I was here in support of the department commander. There's a full agenda, and people have heard my voice before. And if anybody has any questions, I would try to answer them, but I don't want to take any more of the committee's time than is absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And I missed Representative Edelson from the last time, so I don't know if Mr. Johnson or Mr. Michaels can answer your question, Representative Edelson, but go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I really don't have a question. I'm Jewish. And so I just thought it was very cool. I did not know your organization exists. And so both of my grandfathers were Jewish and served in the military. So anyways, just think it's really great that this exists. So I really don't have a question. Thanks.
Thank you,
You're more than
Representative.
welcome,
Mr. Michaels.
Representative Edelson, to drop by and we'll say hi. Bagels, lox, and cream cheese.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Anybody have any committee members have questions for Mr. Michaels or Mr. Johnson? Well, thank you, gentlemen. I know both of you from last session will be keeping us well informed. I do have one question for Mr. Johnson. Does that beard help you in your putting, Mr. Two-Putt Tommy?
Mr. Chair, it was a pretty decent year for putting. Not much for the rest of the game.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So if anybody know when you get a email from Mr. Johnson, it says Two-Putt Tommy on it. So that's why I asked him. But anyway, moving on. Thank you, gentlemen, both for coming in to present today. Next up is Trent Dilks, Executive Director of DAV of Minnesota. Mr. Dilks, welcome to the committee. Welcome back to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Trent Dilks. I am the Executive Director for DAV Minnesota Foundation and the Legislative Director for the DAV Department of Minnesota. It's good to be back with the committee. I had a year away from legislative work while I ran the overall organization, and I'm glad to be back, and feels like home working with the lawmakers and working on what we can do to help some disabled vets and their survivors. So thank you for this opportunity. A little bit about the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans. So we're 100 years old this year. We haven't been able to party like we would have liked to, but this is our 100-year anniversary nationally. In Minnesota, 19,000 members, 32 chapters. I like to tell people we're the oldest, biggest organization you probably haven't heard of. 1.2 million members across the United States, all made up of men and women who were injured or wounded during their time of service. So that is a requirement for our members is injured or wounded during the time of service. We are a little bit different than some of the other groups. We are veteran and veteran family survivor specific. So we don't get involved in a lot of the other things or general issues or things like that. We are, by our charter, we are specifically about veterans, disabled veterans, their families, their survivors, and what we can do with them. So we really stay focused on those things, and we've been doing it for a long time. Some of the stuff we offer in the state of Minnesota, we've got a benefits and claims office over there at Fort Snelling, as well as the department service officers that are available to go around the state and That's actually where I got my start, was sitting down with veterans and their spouses at the kitchen table, or sometimes bedside at the hospitals, and filling out claims and trying to help them get the benefits, and especially the benefits for their survivors, as maybe they came down with terminal illnesses and things like that. Our claims office did 39,000 veteran contacts, is what they call them. So there are emails, calls, discussions with veterans or their survivors related to claims, and filed 8,100 claims in the state of Minnesota last year. Our biggest program, and I'm going to try to pull this up, and hopefully technology will allow it. Can everybody see that? Mr. Chair, can you see the map for the transportation?
Mr. Dilks, it looks good. Thank you.
All right. It is a nice visual. So that's our biggest program. After World War I, Mr. Ford borrowed us 15 Model T Fords, and we started moving veterans around, and we've been doing it ever since, mostly in Fords. We just placed our 39th vehicle in the state of Minnesota here, and that was down in Mankato, and we had the official rollout of that vehicle yesterday. So we have 39 vehicles spread across the state, providing free transportation for veterans and their caregivers to get to their medical, mental health, and other VA appointments. We offer this service at absolutely no cost. We won't accept donations. There's no inferred cost to the veteran. We do not collect money from the VA for this service either. So any of the services I described, we believe firmly in keeping donations and costs and things like that, fundraising, as far away from our services as we possibly can. So we've got 39 of these rolling around. Put that in number wise, last year, so pre-COVID, 25,701 free transports, 1,163,163 miles driven by our volunteers. That actually put us number 1 in the country, even though we only have 2 VA medical clinics. So you look at a state like California, where there's like 11 of them. Minnesota, with our volunteers and our network, was number 1 in the country for how many miles we drove and how many rides we provided for free for veterans. That all adds up to 55,000 volunteer hours put in by our dedicated volunteers. Just an amazing effort. If you look at that map, you can see all of the areas we're covering. Our 40th vehicle, I expect to be placed within the next month or so, and even increase more. We're looking at something up on the Iron Range. One of our chapters, I call it our Canadian chapter, up there on the border, runs a chapter program. So they have 2 vehicles up there providing free transportation as well. So we cover a lot of the state, and I'm sure a lot of your areas are highlighted on that map. We also have an outdoors program. So we bring veterans hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, etc. One of my favorite ones is the houseboat up at Rainy Lake. We bring veterans up there for 5 days out on a houseboat or 2, get them out together and an opportunity to decompress. Ours is a therapeutic outdoors program. So we tend to stay away from the one-day events, which are good. They can be fun and relaxing, but to really help veterans decompress and connect with people with shared experiences, we focus on a little bit longer outings. We also have a foundation. So that is a way we increase our reach. We don't believe in duplicating services. We're trying to identify gaps in services. And so when we find somebody like MACV or some of these other organizations that are doing a very good job at homelessness or suicide prevention, we try to strike out with our foundation, build a partnership, and fund those operations the best we can. So that's kind of what we're doing. I will give a little bit of a COVID update. Of course, like any nonprofit or business, that COVID has hit us hard, and it's slowed fundraising and everything. But I'm very glad to say, proud to say, it has not stopped our services. So we immediately, as soon as shutdowns and COVID started to kind of show how serious it was going to be, partnered with the leaders at the VA medical centers and made sure we were part of their team and their decision-making process, because access to care is the #1 barrier for our veterans Transportation is the #1 barrier to access for care for our veterans because the VA has a regional care model. You have to be able to get to St. Cloud, you have to be able to get to Minneapolis, or hope that you can navigate a community care. But then if you're in greater Minnesota, the transportation options are limited, even if you can manage to get an appointment 20 miles away and not 150 miles away. So we ran throughout the COVID slowdown, shutdown, limitation on who was doing their services. We had 70 amazing volunteers spread out across the state that, so down from our normal 280, we had 70 volunteers that safely transported for things like cancer treatments, dialysis, blood transfusions, things like that, the most critical appointments. They continued to transport, and I'm glad to say they did so without incident. We did not have one of our volunteers come down with COVID, and no incidents traced back to our safe operation. So we worked very closely with the medical professionals to ensure safe operation. An example of that, so just last week here, our St. Cloud program picked up a 94-year-old veteran and brought him to the St. Cloud VA to get his COVID vaccine. So it was great that it was going to be accessible, but if you're 94, independently living, but unable to drive, veteran, especially outside of a metro area, the access to that vaccine becomes an issue if you can't get there. So we're glad to be doing that now and helping our most at-risk veterans get access to the vaccine as that rolls out. And I did see the VA is looking to expand that to their caregivers, and we'll be happy to transport them for free as well until we can get back into normal operations. So that's a quick overview, Mr. Chair, of what we do here in Minnesota. And I did supply an annual report. We're happy to produce those. Every year we like to open our books up, show everybody what we did, where we spent our money, and what we're doing for the veterans and survivors in Minnesota. So for that, I'd be happy for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dilks. Any questions from committee members? Mr. Dilks, I have two. Oh, wait. Oh, Representative Detmer, go ahead. You'll have to unmute yourself, Representative Detmer.
He needs to practice that, I think, Mr. Chair.
I just need a little more practice, I guess. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Dilks, maybe you could share with the committee maybe some of the pieces of legislation that the DAV and other members of the Commander's Task Force has worked on for several years, and maybe you could talk about some of the pieces of legislation that has been important for our veteran community.
Mr. Dilks.
Mr. Chair, Representative Detmer, absolutely. And I have thoroughly enjoyed working with this committee for the last, I believe this is the 6th year now. And we're a little bit different. This is 40% of my job is working on state and federal legislative issues. So we have committed resources to having somebody available to help with this. One of the biggest things, and if you've been around a while, for a while there, I was known as the property tax guy. For 5 years, partnering with Representative Detmer and others, we worked very, very hard on property tax value exclusion for surviving spouses. We got it available to all surviving spouses that of those who die in service or as a result of their service. Originally, they weren't eligible for it in its previous iteration. We got that done 1 year. We eliminated the 8-year sunset, brought 4 surviving spouses into the Veterans Affairs Committee there in the House and had them explain, all 4 of them, how they were facing losing their homes after losing their veteran husbands early to illnesses as a result of Agent Orange for all 4 of them. We got it one-time transferable. We really were able to do a lot of work on that. Some of the things we've been looking at but unable to accomplish over the last 4 or 5 years, we'd love to find a way to expand access to the outdoors. You know, if that comes, you look at other states around, if that comes with a reduced or free hunting and fishing license, DNR has been very open to that if we kept a nominal fee. But it seems like one group picks it up for us and the other group doesn't want it, and then vice versa. And it depends on who picks it up is who opposes it. And I understand the reality of politics, but at 5 years, it sure would be nice if we could all get together and try to offer things like the state of Wisconsin, Iowa, Colorado, Montana, Texas are able to do for their disabled veterans. So yeah, that's just a real brief overview, but we've got a lot we can do specific to disabled veterans. I'd love to see if we could work on something to encourage the hiring of disabled veterans in Minnesota. At different times, there's been discussions about tax credits and things like that may be a benefit to employers to take a closer look at hiring disabled vets, but we haven't been able to get that accomplished in the last few years either. So excited to work with everybody, and I'm always a resource to anybody on the committee. Like I say, this is part of my job, and I'm always happy to answer questions at any time.
Representative Detmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Dilks. I know a big one that I know you worked hard on too was in 2016, we finally got rid of the tax on veterans pensions. And we were one of only 5 states that still were taxing our veterans pensions. And I think now Minnesota can be proud that we finally got rid of that tax. And I think we all can agree it's always easy to start a new tax, but it's hard to get rid of an old tax. And actually, we worked on that total of 17 years to, I worked on it for 10 years, but 17 years to get rid of that tax. We finally did it. So thank you, Mr. Dilks, and looking forward to working with you and the rest of the members of the Commander's Task Force.
Thank you, Representative Detmer. Representative Raleigh.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Dilks, first and foremost, thank you for the work that you do at the DAV. I'm a life member of the DAV. I'm disabled, and just the support the DAV has given me over the years is remarkable and humbling all at the same time. 2 things. I'm working on a bill right now that would give a tax credit for disabled veterans and homeless veterans. And I would like to seek your counsel on that and make sure that we've got the best bill that we possibly could. My question for you would be, well, actually encouraging all the members of this committee to go down to the VA hospital, spend a little bit of time with our veterans who gave so much to our country. It is really eye-opening to see what's going on down there. So besides spending time down at the VA hospital, what are some other recommendations that you could give to our board or to our committee and to the members of Minnesota that are watching this right now? What are some ways that we can get involved?
Mr. Dilks.
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you for that. That's an excellent question. And especially right now, I'd like to draw attention to our state veterans homes. They have been in various forms of isolation and limitation for visitors, things like that. There was a big push over the holidays, and they saw a lot of cards and things like that coming through. And my fear, and the fear that I'm hearing as I talk to workers at the veterans homes who are out there on the ground level, is the post-holiday kind of hangover that people may stop sending correspondence. This can be as simple as a handwritten card, something that starts a correspondence with them. We have a list, davmn.org. We have a list that we compile from the people on the ground at the veterans homes that lists what they could use. So in Silver Bay, they a lot of memory loss unit up there. They like puzzles, 100-piece or less puzzles. And actually down in Hastings, we donated 2 very fancy remote control cars. And when the weather was nicer, the veterans there at the Hastings Veterans Home were having RC car races, which was just a blast.
I have a question for Mr. Dilks.
And so anything that could help fight that would be absolutely terrific. If you have family that could create a card, things like that, reach out to our veterans, and specifically our veteran home veterans, and offer them the support and encouragement and connection that they need with people right now.
Representative Raleigh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Raleigh, Representative Sundin has a question, but well, we'll go to that. Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Chair Eklund. I've got a question for Mr. Dilks regarding the tax exclusion, property tax exclusion for veterans and extended to the families. Something I've been very supportive of in the past and will continue to support such programs. But there is a downside for that for the counties involved. And my understanding is as far as tax exclusion for disabled vets, Hennepin County is #1 per capita for such exclusions. Carleton County is #2. And I do get some chatter from county commissioners that this is dipping into the county coffers a little too deeply from time to time. Has there ever been an effort for the state of Minnesota to step up and pony up cash for these valuable programs? Mr.
Dilks.
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you. Back to my bread and butter, the property tax discussion. So all of the changes that we made over the last 5 years originally had a fiscal note done, and it was a 1/100th of 1% property tax shift. 1/100th of 1% property tax shift to expand it to the surviving spouses. I'd be happy to share the spreadsheet that House Research had come up with when we got that note on it. Overall, the shift in property taxes was nominal. Prior to that, I know there was some concern that this was a shift on the counties, and that was very clear on them that they weren't cutting, they were shifting. And so it came down to, would we shift 1/100th of 1% to take care of the surviving spouses? When this passed, we had the support of the counties. They sat down at the testifying tables. We wrapped up our last change there last year. So we were very proud to work with them on that. I know there had been talks about possibly trying to get a credit. When we look at the dollar amount versus the percentage affected, when House Research did this, it is very, very small. The smallest, the largest impact on a county, so percentage wise, not dollar wise, was still down in the low percent, 1% area as they talked about the property tax shift. So I don't think we're actually impacting their budget. We're talking about our most severely disabled veterans getting a property tax break, both to help them with their reduced abilities, but also as a way to show our appreciation for the 70% and greater and their surviving spouses of the permanently in total or those who die in service. So it's something I'm always happy to look at and work on. But when we ran the numbers before, I hate to accuse any county commissioner of being dramatic, but sometimes when it comes to small property tax shifts, they might be a little dramatic.
Okay, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dilks, I look forward to seeing that information so I can have a more intelligent conversation with the county commissioner. They're not drama queens, but you know, they're trying to protect their purse as well. So I appreciate your efforts, and you can count on my continued support. Thank you.
And before Mr. Dilks goes, Representative Raleigh, last year for this committee, we had scheduled committee tours of the Hastings and the Minneapolis Veterans Hospital. However, we got sent home early, so that didn't happen. We had planned on doing that after third deadline. I doubt very seriously because of rules that we will be able to do it this year, but let's hope that the vaccine works and that maybe next year in the biennium we can take that tour, because I've obviously toured some veterans homes, and it is a sobering experience for people to go see and thank the people that have served this country so greatly. So with that, thank you, Mr. Dilks. I don't see any other questions. I look forward to working with you and the committee on your issues moving forward. Members, we have about 30 minutes left, and we have two more presenters. First is Brock Hunter from the Veterans Defense Project. Mr. Hunter, welcome back to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brock Hunter. I'm a co-founder and president of the Veterans Defense Project, and I am grateful for the opportunity to present to you today. I do have some PowerPoint slides I'm going to share with you, and I have provided those to committee administrator, and you will be receiving copies of those yourself as well. All right. Is everybody seeing that?
Please proceed.
All right. So the Veterans Defense Project is a little bit different type of organization from the others of our colleagues who have presented today. We are a national level public policy advocacy and education organization dedicated to ensuring that veterans coming into the criminal justice system today are treated better and have better outcomes than veterans of previous conflicts. Just make sure we do a better job this time around. The origins of this organization came from my and some of my colleagues' work in the criminal courts, defending veterans throughout the duration of these current conflicts, and our frustrations over time at the way that, from our perspective, the criminal justice was failing our veterans, failing to recognize why they were coming into the system, what kinds of issues they were struggling with, and how we could best address those issues to get them help and move them forward in life so that they're not coming back into the justice system again and again for the rest of their lives. We founded this organization a little over a decade ago, first in helping to draft Minnesota's original veteran sentencing statute back in 2008, and then helping pass similar legislation around the country. And then with the advent of veterans courts, helping to found Minnesota's veterans courts and grow them here, as well as helping grow them across the country. In the last couple of years, our organization has focused most of our efforts right here on our home stomping ground in Minnesota with what we have come to call our Minnesota mission, that we have identified and defined as to expand and improve the way Minnesota's justice system deals with troubled veterans, increasing the understanding of the nature of combat trauma, its ties to criminal behavior, and how a criminal charge can serve as an intervention opportunity to leverage a veteran into needed treatment and help them become assets once again, rather than ongoing liabilities to the communities that they once risked their lives to protect. And as we travel around the state educating policymakers and criminal justice professionals, we often talk about what we call the coming storm, the escalating numbers of veterans that we're seeing enter the criminal courts in Minnesota and across the country. And emphasizing the history tells us that this trend is going to continue into the foreseeable future, creating an increasing public health and public safety issue unless we do more to address it. And we often start that conversation with a little bit of a historical context to give a real sense of the dire situation that we currently find ourselves in. And we note that according to government's own statistics, of the 3 million or so Americans who served in Vietnam, 1 to 1.5 million suffered long-term psychological issues related to their service. And according to a study done by the VA in the mid-1980s, roughly a decade after the Vietnam War ended, the VA concluded that around half of the veterans that it was treating for post-traumatic stress and related issues had had some criminal justice contact. They had been arrested at least once. Same study found that more than a third had been arrested 2 or more times, and nearly 12% had been convicted of felonies. Statistics way outside of the civilian norms. And of course, as most folks know, Vietnam veterans came home to a less than warm homecoming. And when they came home and acted out against their communities and ended up in criminal courts, they were often demonized and discarded into the justice system. And studies by the Department of Justice in the years since Vietnam have confirmed that Vietnam veterans were treated more harshly in the American criminal courts after that war than civilians committing the same crimes. They got longer sentences on average than civilians who had committed the same offenses. So they not only didn't get a lot of benefit of the doubt, their service was actually used against them. And then even today, 40 plus years after the Vietnam War, we still have hundreds of thousands of Vietnam era veterans continuing to struggle with homelessness, addiction, and even incarceration. Their numbers, of course, are starting to decline as the Vietnam generation is aging, but there's still a striking number of veterans from Vietnam coming through our criminal courts. And as we turn our attention now to the veterans coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan and other fronts of the war on terror, we're seeing some pretty stark similarities in the numbers. According to a study done by the US government in 2012, 2.6 million Americans had served in Iraq and Afghanistan at that time. That number is now well north of 3 million. But of that 2.6, the government estimated around 500,000 or so suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. But they also acknowledge that these numbers are almost certainly on the low side, because less than half of the veterans suffering from their invisible injuries had raised their hand or sought help before being identified in this study. So the numbers are almost certainly far higher than the 500,000 that were identified. We also note the role that American women have served in these conflicts. They have served in these wars like no women in any other generation of veterans. Over 300,000 have now served in the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've served in combat roles like never before. And they're struggling right alongside the men in pretty much equal proportion. The VA estimates around 20% of women who've deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan have a PTSD diagnosis. I would also note that it's not just combat trauma that's bringing women into the VA system, but also what we call military sexual trauma. They have been severely sexually harassed or even raped by peers or superiors, coming home with a special kind of trauma that is especially difficult to address. And I think it's really important for us to understand that these 20-year-long wars that we've been fighting, the longest in our country's history, and we've been fighting these things simultaneously, are really unique in our history. And especially because of our lack of a draft this time around. In Vietnam and prior wars, we had a draft, and we're able to spread the burden of fighting over many more shoulders. But you look at the Vietnam War, for instance, draftees were required to serve one 12-month tour in combat, and their obligation was up. And 90+% of veterans who served in Vietnam just did that one tour. When you contrast that to today with our all-voluntary military force that is the smallest per capita in our country's history, we are sustaining these long wars by recycling the same troops back into combat again and again and again, like we've never done in our history. Today, it's commonplace to find veterans who've served 2 or 3 combat tours in Iraq or Afghanistan, not just in the active duty forces, but in the National Guard and the Reserve as well. Minnesota has one of the most heavily deployed National Guard in the country, and I've lost count of how many Minnesota Red Bull veterans that we have worked with who have served 2 or 3 or more combat tours. Some within the active duty forces, especially in the Army and the Marine Corps, ground combat units have served even more, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8 deployments have been documented by the Department of Defense among some of our troops. And within the special operations community, the Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, we're seeing even more than that. Some of them are now up into the teens of tours, and a few are now up over 20 combat deployments since 9/11. We have never deployed individual troops into combat for as long or as often as this generation. How does combat trauma bring these folks into the criminal courts? It's pretty simple. They're coming home without being properly diagnosed or treated for their invisible injuries. They're very often self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, and then falling into self-destructive, reckless, and unfortunately sometimes violent behavior that brings them into the criminal court system. Occasionally, we'll have veterans suffer what we call flashbacks or dissociative episodes where they're reliving a combat experience as if it's happening in the moment. Very dangerous situation for all involved. And we're also recognizing that military training and conditioning, when it is accompanied by untreated trauma and self-medication with alcohol or drugs, increases the likelihood that an individual is going to react to a threat or a perceived threat with violence and get themselves into serious trouble. Historically, there's a lot of scholarship going on around this issue, both around the history of combat trauma and the fact that it has been around for as long as there's been combat, but also history that very clearly shows waves of veteran committed crimes after every major war, both in the United States as well as other countries that have been studied. The Civil War is where our best data starts, and we now know that the prisons in the United States filled up with veterans fresh off the battlefield immediately after the ceasefire in 1863. We also know that it was Civil War veterans who put the Wild in the Wild West. And I always challenge people to name an outlaw or a gunslinger that we grew up hearing about as kids who was not a Civil War combat veteran. The only one I've been able to find is Billy the Kid. I don't know what his problem was, but a lot of the rest of them, I think we got a pretty good idea. We also are recognizing that returning World War II veterans gave rise to the outlaw motorcycle culture that flourishes across the country today. And with the Vietnam veterans coming home, they joined these outlaw clubs and started many of their own. And we're seeing that trend continue today with this current generation of veterans. The most recent and definitive data that we have that ties untreated combat trauma to criminal behavior comes from the Army itself, and a study done at Fort Carson, Colorado in 2009 that found that the number of combat deployments and the intensity of the combat in those deployments statistically predicted pretty accurately who was going to come home and bring their war home with them and act out against their communities. And that is why these multiple deployments that we're doing now play such a direct role in this issue that we're having in the justice system today. So what are we doing about this? Well, as I mentioned before, Minnesota was among the first states in the country to enact veteran sentencing legislation. Our first bill was passed back in 2008, making us the second state in the country to have a bill that encouraged the courts to consider military service and available treatments at the VA and elsewhere in determining the appropriate sentence for veterans coming before the Minnesota criminal courts. The year after we passed our bill, the US Supreme Court cited our law along with California in a landmark decision called Porter v. McCullum, the first time the US Supreme Court had ever addressed the issue of combat trauma in criminal sentencing. And with that footnote referencing our Minnesota statute, our advocacy really took off here in Minnesota and directly led to the formation of the Veterans Defense Project. And we, as I indicated, we have since helped a number of states pass legislation similar to Minnesota's, and in recent years, frankly, better than Minnesota's, taking advantage of the years of experience that we've had working in the courts with veterans and figuring out what works and what doesn't. As I indicated, veterans courts were really kind of the next big thing. And these are specialty courts like drug courts, DWI courts, mental health courts that address the underlying mental health and substance abuse issues that bring offenders into contact with the justice system rather than just simply punishing their behavior. Here in Minnesota, we now have more than a dozen veterans courts that serve many more than that counties across the state. But we still have more counties than not in Minnesota that do not have any form of veterans court. And the veterans courts that we do have all operate on pretty much different paradigms. These have been grassroots efforts that start in individual counties, and some of their models are quite effective, and frankly, some of them not so much. What led to our Minnesota mission the last couple of years was what we define as declining stakeholder buy-in. Attorneys within the system, judges within the system that were getting frustrated with the lack of continuity of veterans courts across the state, and we're starting to pull back from it. And in fact, 2017, the state public defenders pulled out of all of the Minnesota veteran treatment courts because of the disparity of outcomes among those who are participating. So we came in and we sought and received a grant from the state legislature and began working with all of the stakeholders across the state, trying to figure out how we could get our veterans courts back on track, and then how we could push out into the counties in greater Minnesota that do not currently have any kind of veterans court program. Our working group grew over time, but it came to encompass a number of judges working within the courts and the veterans courts, key county attorneys, the state public defender, members of the VA, as well as the Department of Veterans Affairs, met on a monthly basis at the Supreme Court over the course of about 2 years. And together we looked at what worked and what didn't in Minnesota and the United States Veterans Courts, identified best practices, and determined that a key issue that needed to be addressed was the disposition issue. What kind of legal incentive veterans were offered in exchange for their willingness to participate in the Veterans Courts and to be subject to the additional accountability and treatment and all of the stuff that comes with it. We ended up determining that those courts that had pre-conviction adjudication, so in other words, the opportunity to avoid a criminal conviction, were those that succeeded and had the best results with the veterans that went through them. And we identified that this kind of resolution to a case recognized the service and sacrifice of the veterans involved. It helped reestablish broken trust between the veterans and their governments and communities, and incentivized the veterans to commit to what is often pretty difficult treatment to go through at the VA. And it offered veterans a hope of redemption and an ability to reclaim their honor and become an asset in their community rather than an ongoing liability. And most critically, we believe we established that doing this way enhances public safety in both the short and the long term. The bill that we put together is called the Veterans Restorative Justice Act, and you will be seeing that bill before your committee at some point this session. I won't dig into the details of it, but essentially it is the byproduct of this working group, and it adopts these best practices that we identified and puts them into a template that will first and foremost bring all the existing veterans courts in the state onto the same page. So they're offering a similar structure and similar incentives so that everybody is getting essentially the same shake no matter what court they're in. It also, though, provides the same template to judges in counties that don't have and may not have a veterans court for some time, if ever. And it allows a judge to basically create a one veterans court on a veteran by veteran basis, providing the same incentives and sanctions and structure that the veterans court operate on, so that we can immediately start getting help to the veterans in these counties that don't have a veterans court program. One of the benefits, in addition to helping veterans, is that this bill saves money. As you'll see in the fiscal notes, when this bill comes before you, it saves approximately $1 million a year. It saved prison beds, saved county treatment costs because the VA is picking up the tab for the treatment. And so it helps veterans and it saves money. And with that, I will wrap up, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And in light of time, if we have quick questions from the members, we'll certainly take them. But I encourage members to get in touch with you. I've enjoyed working with you and your Veterans Defense Project group in the past, and we will be seeing that bill soon in front of committee. Members, any questions for Mr. Hunter?
Yeah,
Mr.
Chair, Mr. Chair. Yeah,
Representative Detmer.
Yeah, and I've been a co-author on this bill before, and I know most of our discussions about the bill will be done in committee when we hear it, and that's important that we can do that. And but we need to make it clear that this bill is not veterans courts. It's something to to support the veterans courts. So a lot of times people get confused that it's veterans courts program, but it's not. But we'll be taking a look at it as it comes to the committee.
Thank you, Representative Detmer. And as Mr. Hunter said, it provides a template to help our veterans through the court system for places that do not have veterans courts. Any other questions for Mr. Hunter? Well, thank you, Mr. Hunter. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your presentation, and we'll work together again real soon.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Next on the agenda is Mr. Jerry Kaiser, Chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council, and members, we will get done at 4:30. But with that, Mr. Kaiser, please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
There, I think I'm unmuted. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate that. Was quite. I got to hear everyone, and it was very exciting. I am a disabled Vietnam combat tour. I did 2 tours there. I volunteered twice. And, I really appreciate everything that everybody's doing. Nobody cared a rat's rear end for us when we came back. And so our motto as veterans back in those days was never again will veterans organizations or anyone mistreat their veterans like we were when we came back. And so I personally came back to, I had a 2-star general greet me because he happened to be out at the airport where my father was, and it was a great day. I have not met anybody else who's had that kind of return. It kind of made me, the many years to be an advocate. And as you see on the, I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council. I've been doing that for 20 years. And it's an honor for us to do that. As you look at our mission statement there, the UVLC has been around since 1968. The famous Al Lohr out of St. Cloud, who was a commissioner at that time, and then we've built some buildings with his name up in St. Cloud. He was kind of the great stone on this whole thing. And so what we do is co-opt with the other veterans organizations and those who are interested in what we're doing. We have an opportunity, though, when we meet once a month, and unfortunately, all we've been able to do this year is to have a virtual one, which is last month, and we'll be continuing that now on the 27th, next Wednesday, we'll be having that. As you see on the, I believe you still have the, you have 2 handouts there. I'll state it. Our mission is to speak with one voice to facilitate legislation that makes Minnesota more veteran and veteran business friendly. You are a conduit for that. And I'm also a co-chair with Representative Detmer and Representative Senator Anderson and Lang now with the Military Action Group. I'll be talking about the timing of those 2 organizations when we're further on here. You can see all the member organizations we have there, and many of them are with the Commander's Task Force. And we're an opportunity for networking and information that comes from, if you look on our agenda, we have all the people from the federal people, the federal LA people come there and give us 3 to 5 minutes of what's going on in DC, give us an opportunity for the members who are there. We usually have 50 people plus, and those others who are members, and we invite them to come to find out what's going on a monthly basis. So we're sad to say that that hasn't happened this year, but praise the Lord that we can get this thing going in 2021. So the federal agencies come there. We're talking with Vision 23, the VA regional office, both the hospitals and Minneapolis St. Cloud come up there, and they have representatives telling us what's going on. And having a little question and answer, I don't like to get too much because they start talking too long, and so as soon as I stand up, they got to sit down. So it's fun to do. I'm pleased with Representative Detmer helping me getting us started with 10 years ago. He got the Military Action Group going, and that is a great thing, a hearing place for people that can come in and talk to legislators and try to get something going with that particular group. There are many opportunities for legislators to put forth information. The things that you heard from the DAV and the Commander's Task Force and those there, we work hand in hand with them. We're proud to be part of it. We have been around a long time, and we intend to keep our mission going. Just recently, the Military and Veterans Exchange, another organization that have been set up. Those are the new guys coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, and they're getting people involved with the businesses and trying to figure out what's best for them. It's an opportunity that I think that Minnesota has over many of them. We've been invited to talk to folks from around the country what this Veterans Council does. We're not trying to push particular things that the council says. It's what the veterans organizations are trying to put together. We're working with Trent. Is great opportunity to work with him, and same with VFW and the American Legions. And Todd Kemery and I are trying to be working interaction with each other so we all be on the same page. We have diverse organizations. If you look at, we have 31 on there now. It's important for us to let the communities know and what's going on with veterans groups. Like you said, we've been at war for 20 years since 9/11 and even before that. And so it's, we're going to be out of places for people to have. We got the Vietnam era veterans, they're passing away, and it's sadly. I'm also involved in the Honor Flight Twin Cities. We've been doing that for 13 years. And we're seeing our senior World War II Korea veterans, they're dying alone, and it's so hurtful for me that I can't do anything about it. But we will continue to do that. This year has not been good for us with that honor flight, but we will continue on with, there's very few World War II left. However, we do have about 9,000 Korea veterans, and they will be able to go to the greatest days in their life. Representative Eklund, your committee is the starting place for many of these organizations. One of the biggest things that we in the Veterans Council want to have is a omnibus bill just for veteran stuff. Everybody comes up with a veterans bill and throws it into another bill, and then it gets eaten up or thrown out. So we're asking that we could have an omnibus bill. Now that both House and Senate got to agree to that, and so far we haven't got a bill that's going to happen just for veterans issues. I'm pleased with Representative Detmer being involved with the Military Action Group, and same with the folks at the Senate. It's a way to get people together just to come up with ideas. And that's what we work with in Minnesota, is to get the ideas, put them to you as legislators, sort it out and come up with something that's going to make everybody happy. Right now, the governor's got to get it. You and the Senate have to put together a budget. And I hope that we can get that figured out. That is the law, that you have to have one. So I'm asking you that as an organization, we're to support you to do the right things and get those things done. It's an honor for me to be able to speak to you. I felt quite an education today with everybody else first, and so I really appreciate, especially the veterans deferral thing. It's important that we take care of these 3 million other veterans. I don't like to say, I know a lot of National Guardsmen's done 3 or 4 tours, and they're beat up, and we got to take care of them. I'm ready for any questions. I don't want to short you out. We have 3 minutes left, so if not, I'll defer to the commissioner.
Mr. Kaiser, you did a fine job. We do have 3 minutes left, so members, if you have any quick questions, but I know Mr. Kaiser is always available offline to take comments as well. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Mr. Kaiser, you've mentioned the MAG group several times. Members, the Committee Legislative Assistant, Ms. Doyle, sent out information yesterday about the next MAG meeting. If you have time in your schedules, I'd recommend sitting in at least for part of that. It is not a hearing, but it is a good place for discussions, and I know that a lot of legislation has resulted from being part of this MAG group. Again,
Yes.
Mr. Kaiser, thank you for coming to the committee.
One more thing, sir.
Mr. Kaiser.
The Military Action Group meeting is on the 8th of February at 9 a.m. I think it's misquoted on my paper, on my email there. The next UVLC meeting is a virtual meeting on the 27th of January. And then the next UVLC meeting will be in February, I think the 13th it is. So we'll be sending those out, but they are well attended with, and we're praying that we can get face to face. It's really, I can't even say when that's going to be. If you got a crystal ball, Representative Ekman, maybe you can give me a shot. What do you think?
I'll let you know as soon as I know anything, Mr. Kaiser. Thank you. So members and staff, our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 25th. As you could see today, we tried to cram as much into this meeting as we can, and we may have to take a look at scheduling differently. But on the agenda is House File 41 from Representative Frazier. We are scheduling just one bill because we want to see how the bill hearing goes in committee. Any questions from members? Thank you for your attention. I appreciate your time. Oh, Representative Raleigh.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Could I ask that we get the dates that Mr. Kaiser mentioned, either put into the notes or he sends those to us as a separate email?
If Mr. Kaiser could send that through the committee legislative assistant, we can get that stuff put out so we know those dates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from members? Thank you for your attention. We are adjourned.